All right, everyone, let's get the show started. Welcome to Office Hours. It's May 13th, 2020. My name is Eric Osterman, and I'll be leading the conversation. I'm the CEO and founder of Cloud Posse. We're a DevOps accelerator, and that means that we help companies own their infrastructure in record time by building it with you and then showing you the ropes. If that sounds interesting, you can go to cloudposse.com/quiz to get started. Again, that's cloudposse.com/quiz to get started. For those of you new to the call, the format is very informal. My goal is to get your questions answered, so feel free to unmute yourself at any time if you want to jump in to participate. If you're tuning in from our podcast or YouTube channel, you can register for these live and interactive sessions by going to cloudposse.com/office hours. Again, that's cloudposse.com/office hours. We host these calls every week. We'll automatically post a video recording of this session to the Office Hours Slack channel, as well as follow up with an email that you can share with your team. With that said, let's kick this off. So, like I said, goal is to first get to your questions. We have one great question in the Office Hours Slack channel. We'll start by answering that. And if there's nothing else to talk about, I still have something left over from last week I don't believe we got to, which are some fun facts about Kubernetes ingress that we wanted to document because we've run into them a few times. So let's see here. Let me pull up the question from the Office Hours channel here. This is from Matthew. Are you here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Awesome. Awesome. So, oops, gotta get out full screen. Here. And there we go. All right, so question for today's Office Hours. What are the best practices for version numbering of multiple resources, let's say apps, charts, Docker images, etc., stored in the same monorepo? Using Git tags, so for example, using Git tags like version 1.0.1 to track semantic versions seems awkward because all the resources would share the same version, the counter. Using short commit hashes seems more appropriate, but it's not allowed as the chart version expects something in the semantic form of 1.0.1. I'm considering using something like a hybrid of like semver with a timestamp, so like 1.0.unix epoch timestamp, where the last number, is the number of seconds since the Unix epoch, calculated using the commit's timestamp. So, and here's an example using the date command. The major and minor versions could be stored in a file in the base of each resource. So, a couple thoughts on that. First, a slight segue. So, you mentioned that Helm expects semver. And that's confirmed here. Where possible, Helm uses semver too for the versions. And something about semver is often not fully understood. So we all know that semver is broken down into major, minor, and patch release. But there's also a section for basically metadata, and this is your escape hatch. So this is everything that follows the plus sign. So you can have like 1.0.0 - something plus something. So I'm pretty sure, because I think we've done this before, is using either the hyphen or the plus to connote the git SHA after the version. So what that would look like then, based on your example, here is something like 1.0.0 - git SHA, or something like this. Have you tried that?
No, I wasn't aware of the plus or dash trick.
Yeah, so then the next thing to see here is just a note that when sem versions are stored in Kubernetes labels, however, we conventionally alter the plus to an underscore, so it keeps it compatible. So this is also the other hint that that's possible.
Great, that's cool.
Cool. All right, and and then I still think it's nice that to keep the semver convention. If you buy into semver as a specification, so to say, then I think even though you're in a monorepo, I think there's still some value in keeping it because it conveys, you know, the nature of the changes. Are these breaking? Are these major? Are these minor? Or are these bug fixes?
And how would you track the major and minor versions? Would you put them, as I said, in a version file in the base directory of each resource in the monorepo?
Right. This is a, yeah, so this is a challenging, this is the challenge. So for everyone who's not on the same page yet, we are talking about versioning in a monorepo and a versioning mechanism that is compatible with Docker, that is compatible with Helm, that is compatible with Git and GitHub, presumably, etc. So, like, if you're just cutting releases or tags on GitHub, that's one thing. That's easy. That's an API, but that's not now in the source control itself. Yet the Helm version needs to be in the chart.yaml, and the chart.yaml can't, you know, be tied to the Git tag automatically unless you create a convention for it. So how do you achieve that? And one of the things I've seen that I like is creating something. I don't have a URL I can pull up handily for you, but like, let's say we went to Geodesic. This is not going to be an example, but one thing I like is you create a file in here called release.yaml or something. And then in the release.yaml, you have your semver, so your version in there. You have your release notes, you have your release description, you have all of that stuff. And now you stop cutting manual releases and you use your CICD process, your pipelines, to cut your Git tags for you. And then you can also use that same file to influence the versions of your charts. Are you using a chart registry with Helm, or are you using the charts directly from the Git repo?
Yeah, we're using the CodeFresh chart Helm repository.
Okay, so exactly. So in that case, your CD process would presumably generate a Helm chart package, and as part of that process, you could take the version out of the release.yaml and use YQ. Are you familiar with YQ?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. That's what I'm doing already to stamp the version in the charts YAML.
Cool. So I will share a couple links to that for those following along that thought that any of those things were interesting. YQ is one of the tools that we really like. It's part of our Alpine distribution. The reason why I'm linking to it is, like with a lot of open source, there's more than one distribution, one maintainer of YQ, or one repo for it. So we want the Mike Farah.
Yeah, that can be confusing because the two distribution have totally different syntax, and yeah.
So that's that one. I guess we were talking about Semver, so I'll link to that as well. And link to the Helm version. And so that covers that. Cool. Any other questions from you or anyone else related to the current topic?
Yeah, for me, that's okay. I'm good. Thanks.
Cool. All right, let's open the floor up. We got about 18 people on the call right now. Anybody else have questions we can help answer? All right, I see Omar posting.
Can I start? Can you hear me?
I can. It's a little bit faint. Hold on. Let me see what I can do. If I can raise the volume on my side. Say that one more time.
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah. So we're talking about Terraform, TerraGrant, and the next step could be Atlantis, run Atlantis.
Okay.
The question is, have you ever used it? So I'm at the point where we have different AWS accounts, and I started with Terraform, and at some point I had to use TerraGrunt to stop repeating the code.
Yeah.
And that is working great.
Yeah.
Now my question is, has anyone tried these Atlantis? Pros and cons. Is it worth me trying it?
I think Atlantis is a great first step or first introduction to GitOps. We've been using Atlantis and still do use Atlantis considerably with some customers. You'll also find a lot of users in the SuiteOps community using Atlantis, and we have an Atlantis channel. So definitely refer to that if you want to get some first-hand accounts on using Atlantis with Terraform. Also, there are a number of users in our community using Atlantis with TerraGrunt. Atlantis does support the escape hatch of you defining the workflow for your GitOpsing, so to say, and that makes it.
So the support is not out of the box. I gave it for granted.
No, I don't believe support is out of the box. I mean, so like, you know, I think TerraGrunt is a great tool, solves a lot of problems for a lot of people, and you're right, it makes Terraform a lot less dry. My general feeling is what we need for Terraform is a more general purpose task runner and not a purposeful tool just for Terraform, because in the end, you end up using a lot of other tools together with Terraform to achieve the outcome. So for example, we've been using a tool called Variant starting this year to run our workflows around Terraform. But I'm not, I mean, I think, you know, for most people, they're going to find that more complicated than using TerraGrunt, and, you know, to each their own. So
I think we're already introducing quite a bit of complexity. Some people don't even know anything about Terraform, and now we're going to TerraGrunt, and my idea is to try to simplify things a little bit, or at least not really simplify, but to make other things that, you know, I might do or somebody else might do more visible, let's say. I think that's the plan.
I think
Simplify is going to be hard. Yeah.
And here's the way I look at it, and our general feeling about this at Cloud Posse is, while, you know, we are in some ways thought leaders, of course, in this area, we're kind of meta thought leaders, if I can say that. My whole principle is everywhere possible, we want to defer thought leadership to somebody else who thinks about that problem and can do it better than we can. And we want to be able to aggregate all those best practices into a cohesive solution that we deliver to our customers. So, like, you know, I have a personal opinion, you know, on the Gruntworks thing, TerraGrunt thing. You know, take that with a grain of salt. What's great about using TerraGrunt in your situation is, well, it's really well documented. There's a huge community behind it. They publish a lot of best practices. So if your organization doesn't have a lot of opinions on how that stuff should work, you might as well delegate that thought leadership to somebody, and in this case, Gruntworks, I guess.
All right, I'll give it a try. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Hey guys, Eric, how you
doing?
Hey
John, good to hear from you again.
I know, it's been crazy busy. In fact, I have a conflict at 12, so I might have to drop, but I do have one quick question.
Let's get your question answered quickly.
Sorry, I know, I don't know if there's a line or anything.
No, it's first come, first serve. Just jump in.
Okay. Yeah, so I think was it yesterday? Like Slack was down for a little bit, right? Yeah, but anyway.
I had to send emails. Oh, the humanity.
Yeah, but that so I was looking up, you know, they do have a Slack status page on, you know, on, I guess, one of their servers, and I was looking at that, and I was wondering, like, how would one go about building that, you know, for our production environment and all our test environment, you know, to indicate if like certain server is up? Is there sort of a quick solution for that?
Yeah, there are tons of services. This is one of those things. Damn it, I wish I thought of that, because this is just a cash cow. And I don't think it's one of those things you can come up with, like, now that the market is saturated with 100 services that provide this. But if you're the first one, like statuspage.io, I think it was a brilliant business idea, because all they do is they provide status pages as a service. And then they provide integrations for all the services that you use today. So integrations with
Wow.
Amazon, integrations with like Twilio, integrations with, I don't know, Mailgun, PagerDuty, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm.
So then you can make this private or public. And this is 99% of the time when you hit a vendor status page, you're probably landing on a status page IO.
Oh, I see. And what does it check when
Well,
that green light comes on?
No, so this is piggybacking on the monitoring that you already have in place, right? So,
yeah, of course.
so assuming that you have something like Datadog
Yeah.
or Prometheus or Pingdom, like the lowest hanging fruit, if you have nothing today, just go sign up for Pingdom, go get status page, tie them together, and then start building out
Okay.
monitoring infrastructure.
That's nice. All right. Thank you. Thank you for
Okay.
that tip.
I'll share those links here. Okay, and then Omar has a question here, I see. What do you use to authenticate users against AWS EKS? I want to use external authentication mechanism aside from the AWS auth config map. Okay, yeah, so this is a good question. Well, I can answer what we're doing. Anyone else also doing something with this right now? All right, so what, a few things here. So we use, first of all, Keycloak as our central IDP. It's more like an IDP of IDPs that allows us to aggregate multiple IDPs into a single one. So that's Keycloak, keycloak.org. I'll show that here. And then for EKS and the service accounts, so the downside with EKS, well, in just general with Kubernetes, is you basically map an IAM role to a EKS service account, and then so you don't get like the granularity down to the user. You get it down to a service account, and then for that. You can for COPS, not EKS, for COPS you can use Gatekeeper, which is now being spun off actually as a separate project from Red Hat. Yeah, this one here, but interesting. I guess they are renaming it too. This was formerly known as Gatekeeper, but now it's Luketo. Huh. All right, so something we got to look into. And then, but then for EKS, we had trouble with this. So you're going to need to have one of these Kubernetes OIDC proxy tools. Are we talking for the Kubernetes dashboard or the Kube API? Let's see what he says.
Kube API.
Kube API.
Yeah.
So
like you use commands, kubectl command.
Yeah. So, but don't you have AWS already? But I mean, so step one then is you first need to integrate AWS with single sign-on, and then everything else happens naturally. So do you have AWS? Are your users authenticating with single sign-on to AWS today?
Like, we have an Active Directory, then, using Okta, they can log on to, the AWS.
But you're using Okta, so you have single sign-on with AWS then?
Yeah.
Okay. So then they should be able to authenticate with Okta and then use their AWS credentials to authenticate against EKS using the AWS CLI tool to export the kube config.
So basically what I have done is the Okta CLI, AWS Okta CLI.
Oh, yeah.
I created a role on the config map and added some users or some roles that can be assumed. Then the Okta CLI, when they log on, they assume a role, and I add that Okta CLI ARN string to the role, but it doesn't provide me the granularity that I cannot find the original user.
No, exactly. That's the, as far as I know, that is the current state of user authentication with EKS. But if I'm wrong, please somebody tell me and us, or enlighten us.
Okay, yeah. Or
It-
manually add each user AWS user accounts.
Yeah, or you create a separate role for each user, right? And then, but I mean, I don't really like that too much either.
Yeah, exactly. On Azure, I think that they have great solution for that, because they're using Active Directory, so they just simply can authenticate that AAS login to EKS, and they can use Active Directory to authenticate against EKS, but not in AWS EKS. Anyway.
So
But if Kubernetes then supports Active Directory, it seems like you should be able to add that for EKS then as well, no? I've never looked into it though, so it's just.
So I will offer a cloud platform agnostic solution, right? Because I love agnostic solutions like sealed secrets and all that instead of SSM or whatever. There are just Kubernetes native tools like Rancher that can handle all of the authentication to Kubernetes instead. Like, I have a Rancher cluster that's running that connects to my SSO. In my case, I'm using Keycloak. And Rancher handles all the management of, in Rancher's case, it's, Kubernetes service accounts rather than,
But are you getting
IAM or
user
whatever.
level granularity though? That's the
Yeah, total user level granularity on, I can pull out of Keycloak, I can pull like roles. So like if I have a role called cluster admin in Keycloak, I can tell Rancher to pull that role and hand whoever has that role cluster admin access.
And then in the cluster, when they're manipulating resources, can you see it was Joe Bob who did it?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, that sounds like a interesting thing. So if Rancher's doing it, then there's probably it's probably built on some open source components to enable that.
Are you guys leveraging private subnets for your API, Kube API?
So we ended up not doing that most recently, and instead use security groups to protect it. That way we have the optionality of integrating it with external CICD systems.
So you do like whitelist or just IP whitelisting instead?
IP whitelisting is what we decided to do. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm currently debating what to do there.
What you're already running Kubernetes extensively. So what do you have today, and what are you looking at? What prompted this decision?
I think well, right now all our APIs are technically publicly available. We do have like the IP whitelisting. But as we grow users using it, I don't think that is our best solution.
You just don't want to be in the situation that Algolia was in, where they exposed their salt master publicly without whitelists.
Yeah.
So what was I going to say? And remind me, Brian, you're on COPS or EKS?
Both. But I think with right now I'm investigating spot-ins, so
nice.
There's a likely chance that our COPS clusters do get moved to EKS.
Yeah. Those Spot will work with spotins.com. Or you're talking spotins.com or spot instances generally? Yeah. So spotins.com will work with both. We're using spotins.com with COPS too.
Yeah, I'm trying this thing about like maintainability, so I'm trying
to you don't want to reduce the flavors.
Yeah, definitely. Just reducing it versus trying to maintain too. There's actually no reason to use COPS, no real reason for us to continue using COPS other than the fact that like
That's the sad story. That's the sad reality that there's very little reason anymore.
Yeah, we've built automation around using it prior to EKS coming out.
Yeah.
But with like Terraform and EKS, and then EKS and like with their new features and stuff, it doesn't really make too much sense to stay on COPS other than the fact that like we have automation built around like provisioning clusters and deprovisioning clusters and stuff. But yeah.
I've heard a lot of trash talk about COPS lately, saying, you know, that it's not secure. Have you guys?
It's just, I mean, I feel really bad for the project a little bit. Like they were definitely the forerunner for Kubernetes on AWS for a good number of years. And then, you know, EKS comes out and the massive leakage of the brain trust there. So I think there's just fewer and fewer and fewer maintainers to maintain such a large project and keep it up to date.
For me, it's not. It's more so just the maintainability of COPS. Like right now, ours is we provision COPS and the other, amongst other things, with our cluster that we spin up using like bash scripts and whatnot, and just wanting to move towards just using all Terraform to spin up our EKS cluster and like use the Kubernetes provider to, or Helm provider to you know, spin up our monitoring and logging and all that all in one like Terraform apply. So like it's just the ease of maintaining that.
Yeah, the automation around that.
Yeah.
What else comes to mind about that? One thing we want to do, we'll probably get to it this year, either Q2 or Q3, which is, so, you know, we maintain a number of EKS modules. So we have our original worker Terraform module for EKS. So that's in an auto scale group and supports spot fleets. Then we have our managed node group module. And then we have our Fargate profile module. So, you know, with EKS, it's very easy to have a heterogeneous collection of node pools associated with the cluster. The one that we're missing is the spotinst.com variant of the node groups that we want to have. And spotinst.com has a Terraform provider, so we want to implement that.
So you guys are using spotinst.com without the Terraform provider right now?
So we are using, because so for COPS, we're just using the EKS. Sorry. For COPS, we're just using the Ocean controller. And I think all we needed to do is provision some IAM role for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm actually investigating the Terraform provider right now. I haven't actually done any Terraform applies just yet, but I'm a little interested in seeing how like it maintains the state. So say you want to make an update to your EKS cluster separate from Spot.io, does the fact that they're doing so many changes on it, is it like, will the Terraform state be like fickle about that integration? That's
the volatility of the upstream Terraform provider for Spotinst, you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, isn't that true of any provider? You just make sure you're pinning your providers as usual.
Yeah.
I mean, we've been burned many times with the AWS provider as well. And that's, you know, an official one. So the only other thing to point out is that we do have a Terraform module. We didn't end up merging the PR on it. I think we decided, since we're using MapReduce with.
If you'd like to get more information on this.
Can we get a mute there?
Look here in the slides. We've got the link to the video.
Yeah, who's that? All right. Yeah, so we're using it with Presto and the MapReduce. Spotinst autoscaler for Presto didn't handle graceful termination of nodes, so we weren't able to continue the project. But if anybody else is using MapReduce and wants to use Spotinst, this is a great module to start doing that with. MR, Mr.
What is
Scaler.
Spotinst?
What was that?
What is Spotinst?
Oh, yeah, so Spotinst.com is a managed service.
It's Spot.io now.
Yeah, it's Spot.io, and they've diversified their portfolio of products. So now they offer general cost, cloud spend visibility and analytics. Now, as engineers, our first reaction is, oh, I can just use Spot fleets for that. Well, what Spotinst does is so much more than just using Spot fleets. First of all, they're able to set up write scaling for the nodes. Like if you just need one node with 12 gigs of RAM, but the rest of your nodes can be, T3 mediums, the Spotinst Ocean controller will do the right sizing for you behind the scenes. It makes sure you have a diversified fleet of Spot instances. So if the price changes, you don't suddenly lose your entire node pool for EC2 instances. It does recommendations for right sizing your pods. So if your pods don't have the limit set correctly or not at all, it'll make recommendations for setting your pod limits, which is required in order to effectively use the Kubernetes scheduler for auto scaling. What else?
I think their big thing is that they reliably predict when your Spot instances are going to be taken away, and they spin up on-demand instances prior to that happening.
Yep,
That's
exactly.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Is it only AWS? I mean, that sounds interesting that they basically created a software as a service around AWS's own Spot instance and like Spot Fleet APIs. I'm surprised that AWS doesn't really do that at a premium.
Right, they should basically, but there's a lot of calculus that goes into it. I don't know I don't recall off the top of my head if it supports the other clouds. The other thing it does is it buys and sells RIs for you automatically on the AWS marketplace for reserved instances.
Wow.
So no more of this whipping out the spreadsheet every 6 months, totally forgetting it, putting it off until you finally get around to it. This is happening in real time all the time.
That's pretty genius.
It is genius. Another one of those businesses, darn it, I wish I'd thought of it.
I mean, that doesn't sound trivial though.
It's not
your other idea was like, yeah, they got the low hanging fruit, and I fully agree. Yeah, why didn't I think of that? But this one, it's like, damn, somebody had a good idea. They probably put in some serious time to put in to make those APIs work for them and actually be able to sell it and solve some customers some money problems. That's beautiful.
So I saw the funniest picture or whatever. I don't know, was it on the SweetOps Slack or somewhere else? I don't know, but it was a picture of a guy up at a podium, and it was like, you've spent 15 years learning your trade, and this other guy spent 2 weeks learning Vue.js and created the next Tinder for cats and earns more than you'll ever make in a lifetime.
Please find that. That sounds awesome and share it. I didn't see it if it was on SweetOps. But that is the true state of affairs. Brian, I look like you wanted to jump in there for a moment.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say I take this with a grain of salt, but when we were talking to our AWS account manager, that I think AWS actually does have somewhat of a partnership with Spot.io, but he also mentioned that they were in the works of allowing you to provision your infrastructure on Spot and automatically moving over to an on-demand instance when that Spot gets taken away.
Okay, that makes sense.
AWS is working on that.
Which is the scary thing for a company like Spot then, when your entire business premise is undermined by AWS. So by the way, Spot is basically free, depending on how you look at it. They charge a percentage of your savings, which is, I believe, 20%. So
I was just about to comment on how awesome they are about that. Our dev team is actually looking into implementing this for our company today, actually.
Very cool.
We are, I am as well. So if you guys are using Terraform and EKS, maybe we can bounce ideas off each other.
We have sort of a very customized rollover on solution because of our company's very hardcore DevOps needs.
Nice.
We are an AI company that analyzes video streams. Which
what's the name of your company, Mark?
We are Rogue Security.
Rogue Security. Okay.
Yes, our gorogue.co.
Okay.
And it's ROG, not ROGUE.
Go ROG?
Yeah. So ROG is an acronym. It stands for Remotely Operated Guards.
Okay. Oh, wait, I think is it .io or something?
But no, .co. CO.
That's CO. Oops. There. Okay, so like, what am I doing? Oh, there we go. Okay, so you have real-time analysis of video streams. I gotcha. That's cool.
Yeah, we turn any security camera, whether it be a $5 one from China or a $5,000 one with infrared technology, into a smart AI-driven system that is using a cloud-based solution.
Cool.
Our DevOps teams have cracked the compatibility nut so that it doesn't matter what hardware you've got, it'll work with our system.
Very cool.
And that took a huge amount of DevOps solutions, which actually gets me to my question, which is we're trying to solve a transcoding issue from H.265 with the specification of HEVC to H.264, because our administration panel is using Google Chrome, and Google Chrome decided that they wanted to no longer support HEVC protocol, kind of arbitrarily, in our opinion, which is annoying when they do that. Kind of like how when Apple decided it wanted to disable Flash way ahead of like the rest of the market.
Yeah.
This is one of those situations. And so we're trying to find a performant way that doesn't, use insane amounts of horsepower to convert it to H.264. And we're currently trying to solve that problem. And I was wondering if you guys had any insights.
I defer to other people in the community here. I haven't worked with my video stream.
I mean, generalize it out a little bit. Some big data science project that just takes lots of horsepower, but is a temporary, job. Is that accurate?
It's not. It's a constant job. It's a stream that has to be transcoded in real time. And that is constantly running.
So you're saying you're going to be continuing to receive these quote unquote legacy encoded streams?
Yes.
Legacy, based on what Google says.
We do have some cameras that we send what we call our guard box to, that are like 60 years old and analog, and we turn that into a way to get bits out of the building. We have no control over our client's hardware, so we have to be able to be compatible.
Yeah,
Do you already have a video encoding, decoding, or transcoding infrastructure in place?
Compatible with everything.
Are you transcoding streams or files?
So we are transcoding RTSP protocol streams.
And have you looked at media services, AWS, the Media Connect?
We've looked at them. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't, but that's not even the biggest issue. The biggest issue is that they are around 500 times more expensive than our own coded solutions that we have running on an AWS Fargate instance.
Yeah, and in general, like processing streaming jobs is always going to be more expensive from my experiences. So, so you're sorry, but yeah, like Spark streaming, with Kafka's backend to watch, it's just a lot of ongoing processing. So, but I don't have an answer for you, but it's just what I've seen from some other kind of streaming workloads. So.
Are you using, is your encoding infrastructure using a GPU accelerated, or are you running just CPU encoders?
We are 100% GPU based using CUDA on NVIDIA GPUs. We have a couple of instances that we use bare metal on that we just literally, that are not containerized, are just for performance reasons. They are running specifically on that hardware in a firmware hardware, really hardcore to like marriage. And then we have a couple that are containerized that are managed by Kubernetes, depending on what the stream requires. With those types of streams, those are for like our live views, so that we can, when a client wants to like just look at the image, that can have like a 20-second delay. It doesn't need to be super real time like our alert infrastructure needs to be. So we set that up because they come up and down all the time, so we containerized that.
The only thing that's piquing my brain was, I know somewhere in CUDA, you can do transcoding inside the GPU so you don't have to constantly keep copying back and forth. I don't know if when you're doing the original ingest of the video, if you're somehow able to output two streams. You'd have to probably make modifications to your actual CUDA and to your transcode, your encoders or transcoding. I know like the video encoding, when I was working at it, when I did it before, we were using Titan encoders they're using a Titan non-GPU encoder, but those boxes were pretty insane that were running in the cloud.
We tried that solution and it did work, but it wasn't cost efficient. It would have bankrupted the business. Yeah. That's how big the cost difference was.
I know, it's brutal.
You know, it's just our transcoding service by itself is around, just the instances themselves are around $4,000 a month, just for that one piece of our architecture. And that's only to service, I think, 12 of our clients that specifically require that type of transcoding. So it's extremely resource intensive. Yeah, I guess you could say the biggest reason why I came to this community was I was hoping that maybe someone's been here before, and if not, oh well, we'll just keep going and trying to solve it ourselves.
Are you trying to, as you said, it's because now I'm assuming because you have legacy files now that you have to re-encode, or are you just, this is the live streams you're coming in that you have to now transcode from the H.260, what you mentioned, to another format?
It's exactly that. It's the latter. It's we don't transcode files at all. That's not what we do. We operate specifically on streams.
Okay.
All right. So it looks like we got another question here from Omar. See if there's another one I missed up here. I think this is the next one. Yeah. So I want to limit the pod and the deployment to only accept ingress, so incoming traffic, from the AWS ALB ingress, not any other pod deployment on the same Kubernetes. Whoa, something happened there. On the same Kubernetes namespace. The network policy is limited to namespaces, labels, but separating namespaces requires a separate ALB ingress and a separate external DNS, as both of them work on one namespace only. Yeah, hold on, let me digest this a little bit more. If somebody else can chime in faster, please do.
I mean, generically, if you want to control network traffic inside your cluster, you're going to want something like a service mesh like Istio, right? So Istio's got an ingress gateway that you can put, behind AWS ALB or whatever, and then you can configure Istio so that the only traffic that pod is allowed to, receive is coming from the Istio service mesh. You do a MTLS mode strict, and that makes it so that the Envoy proxies that are being injected into your whatever deployment you're running only accept traffic that is secured by MTLS, which means, it's only accepting traffic that's coming from the service mesh, which if you have, one ingress gateway in front of your service mesh, then that's the only way into the, into the fortress.
Yeah, I think Andrew nailed it there. So unfurling kind of this here, what it's saying is basically you want to make sure that there's no basically one pod cannot talk to another pod in the same namespace. One pod cannot talk to another service in the same namespace. And that's exactly what Andrew's saying, where the Istio service mesh or other service meshes come in that implement the MTLS, mutual TLS between the services. So they have to have certificates that allow it.
Yep. It's a big hot topic right now with the zero trust model inside Kubernetes, where you are specifically whitelisting individual applications that are allowed to talk to each other versus, kind of having an open model that Kubernetes just kind of comes with by default. If you do a search on Kubernetes Zero Trust, you're going to find a lot of information on that.
A lot of SaaS. So I'm actually curious, has anyone here using or evaluated AppMesh yet by AWS? We have only used Istio on COPS so far.
Speaking generally, again, the amount of community support you're going to get is much higher from something like an open source tool.
Yeah.
Versus something that's being provided by a CSP.
Yeah.
Well, although if you're paying the CSP a bunch of support money, then they're going to help you, right? I mean,
I'm a little bit fuzzy on the AppMesh because it is, isn't it? More like it piggybacks or borrows on Istio. It's basically the managed control plane for Istio. And then it can also support other meshes as well, was my understanding. But anybody have more detailed understanding? All right. We have a few more minutes here, another 10 minutes or so. Or Mesh CTL, any other questions we can help answer?
I have a question. I'm trying to figure out how to use Ansible with Terraform, and especially if you're using modules, let's say EC2 modules. So,
yeah. So
you had an older module, but it looks like it hasn't been updated.
Well, yeah. So we do zero like traditional configuration management now. So no Chef, Puppet, Ansible, CF Engine, yada yada yada. Almost everything we do is accomplished with some simple cloud init stuff if we need to modify the host OS, and everything else is under Kubernetes. So there's really no need for us to prioritize that. That said, yeah, we have a Terraform module that's basically a wrapper around the exec in Terraform. I don't think that, we did that because at the time there was no mature Ansible provider for Terraform. Now there is an Ansible provider that I believe is maintained for Terraform. So if maybe that's what you're doing, that's worth checking out. Did you look at that one?
Is it official?
No, it's not official. But I believe it was receiving updates.
Yeah, I have a lot of legacy that I have to port.
Yeah. It's, yeah, this was the one here. I see I looked at it not too long ago. So yeah, it was updated within the last 12 months or so. Issues. Looks like this. Let's see what this one here. That seems relevant. This is still working. Yeah, so it looks like it is working. Your mileage may vary, and you know, it has to be. Hopefully, it's updated to work with Terraform 0.12, and if it is, you might be in luck.
All right.
Yeah, so update dependencies to 0.12 was merged last May, so 1 year ago. So it should have some, at least provisional support.
Thanks.
I'll link that in the office hours. Anyone heard about Backstage by Spotify? It's a developer portal to provision applications. Yeah, I did hear about it mentioned. I did not look deeper into it.
Or maybe, like, let me ask it the other way. Do you guys use something similar in your?
Yeah, we use it's pronounced Folkcastle, but or Folksel, but it's written Forecastle. It's a great little, very simple little app which fits the missing piece in your infrastructure.
Works very well.
Yeah, it works very well. You get this little portal that looks like this. You can have any sections you want. And the beautiful thing is you can just add a CRD in your, like in your Helm chart or however you deploy it to Kubernetes. And that CRD will then announce the application to the portal picks it up and it updates. And then when you uninstall the app, it uninstalls the CRD and gets removed from the portal. So we use this like with preview environments. So you can go to a page and see all the open preview environments. And when those environments are destroyed, then they disappear from the menu.
So developers use this portal or
yeah.
So, okay, so they
come so like,
they don't actually have a ton of links now, all bookmarked for ephemeral environments and stuff. So.
Yeah, so first of all, it doesn't do authentication, so you need to stick it behind an IDP or a Beyond Corp style proxy. That's where we're using Keycloak. And then once I authenticate with this, then I see all the services that are deployed to the cluster that have this CRD that I'm talking about, that these are deployed. The other thing you can do is you can add an annotation to your ingress, you can add an annotation to a service, or you can deploy the custom CRD. You can also do it hierarchical. So, so this portal can link to another portal. So here we're linking to a portal, a separate portal where we segmented it out. So here's where you can see all the PRs that are currently running in that environment. So, you know the pattern where you have basically a preview environment for every pull request. That's what this is showing you.
So is this something like specific for Kubernetes clusters or?
Yeah, it's Kubernetes centric.
I think Backstage is like more generic, like I think you can provision the Lambda functions or any service. I mean, you can create plugins and then it kind of.
The thing is, you can't build a tool that works for all use cases. And to me, here's like the value proposition to me for Kubernetes is it is a framework for cloud operations and consistent automation across cloud platforms. Versus if you build it outside of Kubernetes, you're back to square one. You're back to Ansible, Salt, CF Engine. You're back to everybody has a snowflake. But if you're doing it under this framework, then we can now collaborate and do things the same way. Doesn't work if you haven't adopted Kubernetes, but
we don't use Kubernetes.
that's the actual problem. Yeah, so to say. Look, it's not for everybody. I know different strokes for different folks, but that's my.
It will be eventually. Just give them time.
Yeah. So.
Drink the Kool-Aid,
Yeah, it's like, so even like using ECS, we start, like a lot of companies, you dabble in ECS and it's like the training wheels for managed container platforms. And yeah, it's exciting when you get your first stuff up and integrated with your ELB and your code build and code pipeline. And then you want to add DNS and okay, I can figure out how to do that. I add this Terraform resource, I add this. And then it's like, okay, you get it done, but it's like, it is so much effort to do something that you get almost out of the box with Kubernetes. And I like the idea of separating the platform from the application definition. Basically, you have the platform running, that's Kubernetes. Now I submit the application definition, which are the Kubernetes resources, perhaps using a Helm chart or things like that. And it creates it for me automatically. Automatic DNS with annotations, automatic TLS certificates with Let's Encrypt and Cert Manager, automatic service meshes with Istio, automatic reloading of pods with config loader, automatic application portal using CRDs, and the list goes on and on and on and on and on. And you're not seeing the same things on top of ECS because you just frankly don't get it on ECS.
You make it sound so easy though.
Yeah.
Well, it is when you hire Cloud Posse, right?
Yeah. Where do you guys draw the line? Do you ever use ECS anymore for clients?
We only use ECS for clients if that's like what the SOW calls for, and they're on the smaller side. Like they got one or two microservices. They're not going to be going the route of dozens of microservices. They don't need all this other sophistication. But that's the only case. Like we were for a little while deploying Atlantis inside of ECS Fargate, but the amount of infrastructure to do that the quote unquote right way, which is arguably not the right way then, was too much. So now I'm like, I don't even want to do that anymore. And I'm leaning more towards pushing clients to standardizing around one of like Terraform Cloud for the GitOps, and then using triggers for that into their CI/CD system, or using CodeFresh, or using GitHub Actions. We're also working on a Jenkins project right now, but somebody asked earlier about the Atlantis, using Atlantis for GitOps, and I realize now I didn't finish my thought on that. So I'm sorry. What I wanted to say there is we still have customers using Atlantis today. Atlantis has done well for us and our customers. It has brought GitOps into the organization, warmed it up, and then like anything, you reach the ends or the limits, you push it to the max, and then you realize there are things you want to do that you can't do with Atlantis. And first and foremost, the thing you don't get with Atlantis is this ability to to customize the workflow. And I'm overloading the word workflow here because Atlantis has a workflow. You can define your workflow. You can decide how that works, but it is strictly like chat ops in your pull request, that kind of workflow. But the rest of your company is using a pipeline, in Jenkins or CodeFresh or Circle CI or Travis. And now suddenly the Atlantis workflow doesn't fit in line with this other pipeline that you have somewhere. So this is where I think something like Terraform Cloud actually helps, because you can trigger it with webhooks from your other pipelines. All right, we are basically.
If you were using only Terragrant, that would give you a bit more flexibility then? You think than Atlantis?
But aren't you? I mean, you're still like this. It's looking at it from one side, like just infrastructure. But if you want to truly fuse dev and ops into DevOps, where developers are doing, when you release an application that depends on RDS, that relationship is conveyed in the same repository, in the same pipeline, that you first deploy your RDS instance, or apply any changes to your RDS instance, and then you deploy your application, and then you deploy your migrations, and then orchestrating that pipeline end to end is what you don't get if you're using Atlantis. If you are just looking at a bifurcated model where it's just like the world of ops and Terraform and the world of software developers, and there's this wall in between it, yeah, it'll work.
Because you can integrate RDS, like you said, you can integrate Kubernetes, you can even integrate the application with Helm, for example. So in theory,
I don't think you're going to be using Atlantis for your release process, your deployment, your continuous delivery process, your continuous integration. Right?
Yeah, at the moment we're using Jenkins, which is outside of this process.
Exactly. So So then, what is the process going to look like? So you have this pipeline in Jenkins, and this change requires an upgrade of the RDS instance. You have to orchestrate that process via WikiOps, or basically in your release notes or somewhere you need to communicate that, but it's not an automated process. And maybe that's beyond what you're hoping to accomplish at this stage. Just be aware that after a while, when this stuff is working well, then you suddenly realize you want to do these other things, and then because of the choice of tools, you can't do these things.
Because at the moment I'm doing it manually with TerraGrant, and that's what I was trying to avoid, or trying to figure out whether there was a way.
So like the ECS example I brought up before, I think ECS is awesome as a way to start with containers and a managed platform for doing it. And then you push it to the limit and you realize, there's stuff I want to do that we're not doing here. Atlantis, same thing. You don't have anything like this in place today. Implementing it the first time on your own and getting it right, really hard. You're not going to get it. Start with Atlantis, internalize these workflows and what it does, make it work for you, and then just be aware that in a year from now, 2 years from now, I don't know when it's going to happen, you're going to run into the wall that we ran into probably, which is that we want it even more automated. We want end-to-end, pipelines for this stuff to promote changes. So no changes left behind. That's what we get when we do it outside of Atlantis.
Cool. Thanks again.
Sure thing.
So what do you use? I couldn't get that part. Like, how do you solve?
So we've implemented, in our most recent in our two most recent engagements this year, we're using, for one customer, it's Jenkins. For the other, we're using CodeFresh. And we re-implemented the logic of Atlantis in our own pipelines.
Right.
And it was a real pain in the butt. And it was a lot of ugly shell scripting.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to go through a few more iterations on that before we can say it's solved. But what I really like about it is it's now fully integrated in the same pipeline. All right. Well, then I guess I will wrap this up for today. Thanks everyone for sharing. Always learn a lot from these, live sessions, and appreciate everyone showing up. A lot of familiar faces on the call today, some that I haven't seen around. So welcome back. If you're, let's see here. So if you want to book a session with Cloud Posse, you'll get to talk with me directly. Feel free to go to cloudposse.com/quiz. Again, that's cloudposse.com/quiz. A recording of this call will be posted to the Office Hours channel and syndicated to our podcast at podcast.cloudposse.com. So if you ever miss one of these sessions and you want to tune into what we discussed, you can always do so from the car just by subscribing to our podcast. See you all next week, same time, same place. Thanks again.
Thank you, Eric, and everyone.
Thank you. Have a good evening. Bye.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Thank you.